Groudon is back. From June 27th to July 10th, you have a chance to fight and capture that big red Lego brick. And if you're lucky, you might get that green, mustard, yellow Lego brick. Yeah. Now, I don't think you guys came here to find out what color Groudon could be. I think you came here to know how to best beat it down and its use in the meta. And, well, I got that info for you. Here I graphed out the best general counters to the Groudon Raid. So it's level 40 counters against a tier 5 Groudon Raid using Dragon Tail and then the average of all of its movesets with no dodging and best friendship. One thing I would like to let you guys know about is the dodge bug is allegedly fixed, and these moves are pretty easy to dodge, so even though I didn't graph the dodging, you might want to try the dodging out if you're not too busy having a conversation, right? Best friendship, of course, and simmed out through Go Battle Sim. I got a nice little trio line here for you, so you know what kind of DPS you need for the trio. But each time you relobby, that's going to add about 1 to 2 DPS required for the trio, and chances are you are going to relobby at least once. So be mindful and maybe go a little bit higher on this trio line if you were to attempt such a battle. And then with the changes to raid boss HP and everything like that, even with a weather bonus, chances are you're not going to duo. The closest you can get is weather boosted Kyogres against like a Mudshot Fire Blast moveset, but it's so narrow that I really can't advise it. I wouldn't be too shocked if somebody were to achieve that duo, but it's nothing I can really promote to you guys because it's just such a narrow thing, even with all the bells and whistles going. Now, some cool additions I have on this graph is the Hydro Cannon Swampert. I believe Hydro Cannon Swampert comes after Groudon already leaves us, but it's a nice little primer to see where Hydro Cannon Swampert is going to end up in the meta, having very similar DPS to the Kyogre. And then also down here, we have the Hidden Power Ho-Oh. A lot of people are thinking about Ho-Oh with a double fire moveset. Well, this is Ho-Oh with a ground effective hidden power, so ice, water, grass, with the solar beam. So pretty effective, extremely tanky counter. If you got a level 40 version with the right hidden power, could be a very useful Pokemon for the trio. Now, while this graph here is all fine and dandy, I think we can get a little deeper. Here we have the same exact graph, except I cut off Ho-Oh and I cut off those weaker boys down here to improve the visibility of all the crazy breakpoints I have going on here. Man, this is getting wild. It's like the more good options we get for raids, the harder it becomes to read these types of graphs because there are so many Pokemon that are so good and worthwhile. So I'm going to have to find a creative way to tackle this in the future. But for right now, squint closely and try to find the lines of the Pokemon that you feel suit you the best. Now, Kyogre aside, and Ice Beam Mewtwo aside, I think a real standout option for this raid is Gyarados. Now, Gyarados was kind of a niche option before for the Groudon raid, like back in the deep past, but because of the changes in type effectiveness, Gyarados now resists harder than before and hits harder than before. So it's a very good option for the Groudon raid. Of course, if you're up against the Solar Beam moveset, then you will want to play with another Pokemon. That's something I should highlight to you guys. This might be your first time fighting Groudon. You might not be too familiar with it, but the charge move does kind of shape which Pokemon will be optimal to fight Groudon against. If you're up against the Solar Beam set, well then the grass types are going to be a bit more reliable than before. If you're up against the Fire Blast moveset, well then the grass types are probably going to want to stay in their Pokeballs, and you're going to want to bring out the water type Pokemon. And if you're up against the Earthquake moveset, well then, that's actually very similar to the graph I have here right now. It's pretty neutral. Cool thing to highlight with the Earthquake, though, is our boy Gyarados over there gets an immunity tier doubled up resistance, making it like an ultra tanky option for that particular fight. Other cool things to highlight to you on this graph is if you are a Weavile enthusiast, a level 35.5 Weavile is the equivalent of level 40, although it isn't exactly the best counter to this fight by any stretch. Here we got the Sceptile, and then as far as Frenzy Plant and Leaf Blade goes for Sceptile, they're both equivalent, so I don't know, your choice, man. It's just Leaf Blade is that good. And as far as Bullet Seed and the Fury Cutter goes for Sceptile, in the past it was all about that Fury Cutter, but because we have the boost in type effectiveness damage, They're like equivalent. You can go with either one. Similar fast move info for the Glaceon. When you have Glaceon maxed out or nearly maxed out, Ice Shard and Frost Breath end up being about the same. Ice Shard actually pulls ahead a little bit near the end of the game there. But if you are around like level 30, you can see here are the level 29 breakpoints. They both happen to have a level 29 breakpoint, which is kind of ironic. But yeah, at that level, they're like Frost Breath is noticeably higher than Ice Shard, but later down the line, Ice Shard overtakes the Frost Breath. So, but it's only by like a little bit. So yeah, use whatever you want to on your Glaceon, man. I wouldn't worry about it too much. Now when it comes to the Rose Raid and the Leafeon, there is the advent of the double moveset going on. What I mean is comboing Solar Beam with either Grass Knot or Leaf Blade, depending on which Pokemon we're talking about here. And statistically, that would be an improvement for the Pokemon. However, the improvement isn't such a massive, crazy leap more often than not that I feel like it's not really worth it to include it on the graph. But if you do want to squeeze out every little bit of DPS you can from these Pokemon, going with the combo moveset and then leading into the Solar Beam and then cleaning up with your secondary, easier to get to charge move, that would be the most ideal route. If I end up finding some free time before Groudon leaves us, I'll see if I can get a closer look at how those guys are doing so you guys can be in the know. But in general, not that big of a deal. So that's how you beat down Groudon. How is Groudon in the meta? Well, in the raid meta right now, it is still the #1 ground type Pokemon. However, Garchomp is right on its heels, like almost better than the Groudon. And as you'll see with my Raikou content tomorrow, Groudon has a little bit to worry about with Garchomp existing in the meta with those doubled up electric type resistances. Now, as far as the future goes, we did get that Gen 5 teaser in the latest artwork for Pokemon Go. And if you're wondering about Gen 5 Pokemon, there is tons of competition for Groudon coming up in the future. We got Excadrill, which might get Drill Run or Earth Power. Either charge move will put it above the Groudon. And then we also have Landorus. We got 2 forms of Landorus to worry about in the future as well. So Groudon, be wary. So overall, do you want to power up a Groudon? Well, with Raikou Day literally coming up tomorrow, maybe you might want to brush up on a Groudon for that. But overall, maxing out a Groudon might not be the best idea, especially when Groudon is probably going to power creep itself with Precipice Blades, and knowing Niantic, Precipice Blades is probably going to be some special you can't TM it kind of nonsense. So, yeah. Now, as far as PvP goes, Groudon does not have any showing in the Great or Ultra League, but is still a really good option for the Master League. However, if you don't already have a Master League Groudon maxed out, I don't think it's really worth it to max it out. Garchomp does the same job, but arguably better. Groudon does handle Dragon type attacks a little bit better than Garchomp does, but at the end of the day, I feel like Garchomp's boosting consistency definitely outweighs Groudon's whatever Groudon does, Solar Beams. We got Outrages now, yeah. So overall, Groudon, pretty solid Pokemon, definitely not a bad Pokemon, and if you've already powered one up, it will serve you well. But as far as powering up one nowadays goes, I really can't advise it. You know, the chutzpah, it's just not there. And that's all I gotta say about Groudon. If you got any questions on this content, comment below, let me know what's up, and I'll be happy to help you out. And if you enjoyed this content, you want to see more like it, maybe you want a close look at the best counters to Raikou, well, make sure to subscribe to SwagTips. Swag.